in the 2010 census, the list goes on, that we were at the bottom. And when I made the decision with my family to run for governor, my goal, aspiration, was not to get to 47. It was to get to the top 10. And how do you do that? You have to innovate. So this fear of failure thing was important to get on the table with my team. And I said, if everything we worked on worked, it meant we weren't doing our job. Because we weren't pushing the envelope hard enough to innovate. And I said, we'll use this as a learning experience. And that's part of one of the expressions I use, relentless positive action, came from. No blame, no credit. What's the problem? What's the solution? And be relentless in pursuit of a solution.
Rick Snyder, Michigan's 48th governor, president of Gateway. You had, I think, 3 degrees from Michigan by the time you were 23 years old.
That's where the nerd thing came from. I'm a proud nerd.
One tough nerd, yeah. Yes. I remember that vividly. And really appreciate you joining the podcast, and really excited to learn about your history. I know you've got a long career in business, as an executive at a big company, as a VC.
Yeah, I joke to people, Mike, I'm on my 5th career. I can't hold down a job. Every about 8 to 10 years, I changed careers.
Well, that's great. I mean, you get to apply skills and lessons from all the different experiences you've had. So really excited to dig into that. And then economic development is something that, you can't think about Rick Snyder without thinking about the history that you have with MEDC and Spark, and then obviously work that you did with the state. But I'd just love to hear about, kind of maybe give us your backstory, right? Like, lots of people may know it, but you had 3 degrees from Michigan, were in accounting. How did you evolve from, the private sector work that you did to deciding that you wanted to have a life in the public sector as well?
Yeah, so I am a proud nerd, because that is part of the story, in the sense that I grew up in a 900 square foot house in Battle Creek, had wonderful parents. We didn't have a lot. I joked when I came to the U of M, I didn't know what a bagel was. So I hadn't seen a lot of the world, let me put it that way. But actually, I came up here and I built a career plan back when I was in high school. That was a very nerdy thing. And I said I wanted 3 careers in my life, at least. So the first career was to be in the private sector, because I wanted to learn where most people are. Most people are in the private sector. And then I hoped to be successful enough where I could financially support my family, so I could go do public sector things and other things. So the idea was private sector up through like 40 to 60, then transition to the public sector and just hopefully give back and help people. And it wasn't necessarily to run for governor, but to do public service. And then the third career, when I'm done with that, is can I do things to help people? Mentorship and other things at a smaller scale where I'm not in the news every day, but still continue to give back.
And you had that designed, it makes me think of the Wembanyama thing. Do you know Victor Wembanyama is an NBA player that had like his career plan? Or it was Ohtani also, the baseball player, had this too.
So that led to my educational plan. So I figured get a bachelor, liberal arts degree, bachelor of general studies, MBA for business, and law degree, because it's handy for everything, including public service.
Absolutely.
So I said, I'm not going to school for 9 years, so I did it in 6.
Just, consolidate it down and get rolling. And then, you worked your way up in your career, accounting at Coopers and Lybrand, Gateway. When did you first get connected into public sector work?
Yeah, so it really was economic development. My only public sector job has been governor. So that's the only office I've ever held. But prior to that, I had done a lot of community work and economic development work. That actually went back to my Gateway days in Sioux City. I was part of the Siouxland Initiative, which was their economic development group, and loved it, and it thrived, and they needed the help. So we had everything from a housing initiative, because we needed more housing for people in the area, to economic development. So when I came back to Michigan, that was a natural to get involved with that. And it really started here in Ann Arbor, and then at the state level, I started talking to the state about saying, we need to do more for entrepreneurship and innovation. So Governor Engler at the time asked me to be the first chair of the Michigan Economic Development Corporation.
So this was late 90s?
This was like 97, 98.
Okay. And if I recall correctly, the reason why he asked you to get involved was because you had some good ideas. What were the ideas you had? What did you think needed to be done?
Yeah, so Michigan had a history of large corporate work. I mean, Ford, GM, everybody knows all the big companies formed here.
Yeah.
Well, they started as entrepreneurial companies, but we had sort of lost that spirit
Yeah.
in Michigan.
You felt that in the late 90s.
You absolutely did. And again, if you look at the orientation, one fun illustration you can see today is I went and got an MBA back in the late 70s at that point in time. It was all big corporate. They didn't have entrepreneurship programs really.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at it today, look at the transition, but that was because that was the market.
Right.
So the world had changed enough where we needed to be much more entrepreneurial. We had to be much more forward thinking. And I appreciate Governor Engler seeing that. And the MEDC was a real innovation. So it was a public-private partnership with all kinds of local economic partners coming into play and us doing it together. So it was on the leading edge in the nation at the time.
What do you think I'm curious to learn about what the structure of that was. You talk about, because I think there's a lot of big companies that were involved. Were there smaller startup companies involved at the time? I'm not familiar with the startup ecosystem even looked like then.
Yeah, no, we were building it. If you look at, so there was a generation before my time coming back, which was the late 90s. There was a generation of great people, Dwight Carlson. There are a lot of great names you can go, Ian Bunn, that you can go back to that were the real originators.
Yeah.
But then there was a whole nother group of us that sort of came about that time. Enterprise Development Fund, Mary Campbell, Hayden Harris, I mean, all that kind of group, 2 or 3 other groups. So there were about 4 or 5 venture groups that came about the same time. And so we were the next generation, but it's fabulous to see what's going on now in this area. Now we're a real national player, I believe, and have a lot of upside opportunities. So it's that old thing. Good economic development. People always ask me, what's the key? It's not one specific program to give money to someone.
Yeah.
It's consistent behavior following a vision that's clear and concise and doing it consistently for a lot of years.
And and embedded in there is a funding mechanism. So could you maybe elaborate on that? In the early days of MEDC, what was the vision? And what was the funding?
Yeah, so the early days of the MEDC, the vision is to be much more entrepreneurial, to be more broad-based, to be public-private, so it wasn't just the government coming up with programs. And we had a dedicated funding stream, which was tobacco settlement money. There had been the big settlements about tobacco being bad. Michigan had a huge amount of money coming in. That was dedicated towards economic development, and that was a great idea. So the interesting part is if you look at the first few years of the MEDC, it did fabulously well. And then, to be blunt, it got too politicized. And so the MEDC is still doing some good work, but I wish it would get back to its roots more and get back to that, because surrounding states actually took the Michigan model, the MEDC model, and have executed very well on it. So I would describe it, we got some catch up to do here.
So so the initial funding was from the tobacco settlement. Was that, and pardon my ignorance on that, was that like a dedicated for a period of time, or is it ongoing still?
I think it ran out, but it was for quite a few years.
Got it. And how much money are we talking about roughly?
Oh, it's significant money. I wouldn't want to guess. I mean, that's a good artificial intelligence question. They can get that answer to that. But it was a significant stream to allow us to do some really great things.
So broad-based, public-private, what were the, when you kind of take a step back, like what were the things that worked?
Yeah, it was, again, consistent behavior, figuring out what to invest in. One, you had to market the state. And we hadn't been marketing the state as a welcome place to do business as much as we could have, and that helped a lot to do that. We had consistent programs, and the areas that business people really care about when you talk to them is, can you help us with our workforce? Can you help with training? Can you help with development, recruiting, all those kind of things? And then infrastructure, roads, bridges, other connections, broadband connections, all those kind of things. So it was substantive things, not so much about just writing somebody a check to say, we're going to subsidize you.
So that money went into all those, like even infrastructure was funded through that.
Interchanges quite often, or roadways into an area, it would help a lot. It was interesting. So I'll skip ahead a little bit. When I was governor, the classic part is I did a lot of foreign trade missions where we brought tens of thousands of jobs to Michigan collectively. But I went into one meeting at one point in an Asian country, and the first line out of the CEO's mouth is, tell me how much money you're going to give me. Tell me about all the incentives. And I looked at him and I said, Well, that's going to be a really short conversation because I wiped most of them out because I don't think they make sense.
Yeah.
But let me tell you why you should come to Michigan is because your supply chains in Michigan, that you need to have the best suppliers as close as possible to you. And let me tell you about the talented people that are going to give you the best workforce. They came to Michigan.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that's you hear a lot about how there's basically money that's been given to people for various projects that might not have the economic impact. You know, I think we've seen it with some manufacturing facilities.
No, and that's an issue that, again, it got too politicized and government people got too involved in the sense that they viewed it as, here's money to come to Michigan. I view it as it's almost a failure if you have to buy somebody in your state.
Right.
It meant you didn't have the best climate for them, that they'd want to come anyway.
Yeah.
So I always viewed it as, let's create the best environment possible and let free enterprise work. The other key part is before you go hunting for like big deals in particular, think about that. I always call it, you should focus on gardening first.
Yeah.
Because
resonates with me.
Yeah, well, you ask any business person, if you have clients, is it more important to keep a happy client or to go after the new client?
Yeah, keep a happy client.
Yeah, so the way I view it is we need to get refocused here on Michigan and gardening again.
Yeah.
And once the garden's growing well and you got success, then you can look to do some hunting.
What were the issues? I mean, so you talk about workforce. Like, I'm curious what some of the issues were at that time related to workforce.
Yeah, well, again, if you think about technology talent, think about the Ann Arbor area, all the talent here. This is a great magnet. So sort of transition into Ann Arbor Spark a little bit.
Yeah.
So one unique thing we did in Ann Arbor Spark that was revolutionary to economic development across the country largely is we created a vice president of talent position to talk to anyone about all the talent we have here.
Right.
And we were actually criticized. I was criticized for, why would you do that? Because people are just going to take smart people out of your town and they're going to move away and you're not going to have anyone left. And I said, I don't believe that. So what we found, it actually was the largest generator of jobs coming into Ann Arbor was through our VP of Talent, our talent wing, because what would happen is they would come and say, we don't just see one or two people here.
Right.
We see a whole bunch of people.
Yeah.
We want to open an office here now.
Right.
And we want to grow that office.
Right. Yeah.
So,
I mean, Google.
But people didn't think that way.
Right,
and we need to get back to that mindset to say it's because of the great talent we have.
Yeah. Well, I want to maybe step a little bit into the future in your career, where you had a very successful business career, and now you're thinking about transitioning into government, and you become governor. What are some of the assumptions you walked in with that you kind of updated your thinking on as it relates to getting things done in government?
Yeah. So again, it's one of those things. I analogize people. I didn't figure this out on my own, but actually becoming a governor or actually campaigning for governor, campaigning for office and taking public office is much like doing a startup.
Okay. That's not obvious to me how that would be, but
no,
go on.
But if you stop and think about it for a minute, you have to have a vision,
sure,
right?
Yeah.
You have to build a plan. You have to raise funds.
Yeah.
You have to go get excitement. You have to go get customers.
Yeah.
You got to go build this. And essentially, it's like a startup.
Huh. Okay.
And so the funny part about a startup is I always tell people, and I've done multiple startups, so I'm part of this, is you got to be a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
Because it's not a fully rational act. Because you see something other people don't see, but you believe in it enough to go for it.
Right.
So the fun part is
and you're an outsider.
Yeah,
I mean, in your campaign, I think you if I recall correctly, like you weren't seen initially as like someone who had a big chance, right?
No, I'm a nerd.
Yeah.
and so if you look at it, I had a pretty good idea of economic development and a number of things that needed to be done. But did I have a full understanding of all the things I had to do? No.
Yeah.
But I had confidence, not in just my skill set, but I had confidence that we could build a team of people that would bring that expertise. Because that's something that people don't talk about enough. And I encourage people, if you're talking to somebody running for governor today, ask them about how they're going to build their team.
Yeah.
Because you're one person.
Right.
There are 47,000 employees at the state of Michigan.
Right. Yeah. Good luck knowing everything.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I guess, there's something that I think is talked about a lot, and that is we should run government. The thought is we should run government like a business.
Yeah.
Right. And so as a business person who went into government, I'd be curious your take on that. Like, what are the areas where you think that actually does work? You know, you talk a lot about customer service, for instance, and what are the areas where that doesn't work?
Yeah, so there are a lot of analogies that do work. The most important one being customer satisfaction.
Yeah.
If you want a successful business, if you make your customers your top priority, you're going to have a successful business.
Yeah.
Even more than looking at the bottom line.
100%.
That's one commonality. And quite often in government, people don't think about customer service enough.
Yeah.
And that's something that we can talk about more, and I'd be happy to. The big difference is you don't have profit as a motive. In a business, you do have profit as a goal.
Right.
You don't have in government, and you shouldn't have. And that actually leads to one of the challenges, and that gets to accountability and measuring things.
Yeah.
So one of the key measurements you use quite often is your income statement. And again, it's not about maximizing, but knowing where you stand and that you have revenue and expenses in line.
Yep.
If you go to government, the challenge there is coming up with measures of success. And in many cases, a lot of politicians try to avoid being measured. So the funny story I can tell you, true story, is my first day of the state coming from my background, I actually did a dashboard.
I wanted to ask you about this.
Yeah, I did this dashboard of 20-some metrics.
Yeah, and you talked about that as part of your campaign.
Yeah, and I put the dashboard up saying I want to be held accountable for all the years that I'm governor.
Yeah.
And the feedback I got after my speech is other political people and the press came up and said, that was a dumb thing to do. Why did you do that? And I'm going, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And their response was, now you can be held accountable. Now you can get in trouble. And I looked at him, I said, I'm a half full guy versus half empty. And I said, how do you know you're succeeding if you don't measure it?
Yeah.
And so I view measurements, I'm not afraid of any kind of accountability or measurement because I view it as, now I know it's working.
Right. You can't improve what you can't see.
And so that psychology is important. So when I became governor, that was a huge message to my team. Because you got to remember, Michigan was 50 out of 50 when I became governor. We were at the bottom.
In what sense?
Pick a lot of metrics.
Yeah.
We had the highest unemployment. We were the only state in the nation that lost population in the 2010 census. The list goes on that we were at the bottom. And when I made the decision with my family to run for governor, my goal, aspiration was not to get to 47.
Yeah.
It was to get to the top 10. And how do you do that? You have to innovate.
Yep.
So this fear of failure thing was important to get on the table with my team. And I said, if everything we worked on worked, it meant we weren't doing our job. Because we weren't pushing the envelope hard enough to innovate. And I said, we'll use this as a learning experience. And that's part of one of the expressions I use, relentless positive action came from.
Yep.
No blame, no credit. What's the problem? What's the solution? And be relentless in pursuit of a solution.
Yeah. Love that.
And it works.
Yeah. So, I mean, that program, was it called MI Dashboard or My Dashboard?
Yeah.
I looked at it the other day, and it doesn't exist. Or at least maybe it doesn't exist publicly. And so you talked about MEDC becoming politicized, and you talk about the incentives to have transparency and performance with the dashboard maybe aren't there. Is that just something that you think we as citizens need to accept? Or is it fixable? Like what? Maybe go back to the MEDC politicization thing. Like, is that unavoidable in your view?
No, we just need to get back to a clearer focus and execution of what we're talking about doing.
Yeah.
So get back to the vision to say, this is MEDC's role to do regardless of who's governor, and let whoever's governor take credit for it.
Yeah.
But stay focused in on good economic development, which is consistent programs over an extended period of time. And just something I'd like to expand on a little bit, though, about my work at the state. So we talked a little bit about this fear of failure and different things. One thing that was a big deal to me that I didn't fully appreciate is how good state employees are.
Yeah.
Because they don't get a fair rap, or government employees in general.
Yeah.
They're wonderful people. A lot of it, though, is the leadership that they have and how that's represented to them and how they're encouraged to innovate or not. Because a lot of it, if you think about it, if you took a job and you're all excited to go into government, you did it quite often because money wasn't your main motivation.
Totally.
You wanted to go help people. But what happens after you come up with a good idea 3 or 4 times and people tell you to knock it off?
you probably stop coming up with
or
it.
not bring it up,
Yeah.
or don't rock the boat.
Yeah.
And too often that was the case. So one thing we did is, over my 8 years, we did 5 employee surveys. And I took these really serious. I would read every comment off these surveys. And we had subcategories. We had a category called champions and a category called captives. And the captives were the people working towards retirement.
Okay.
They had sort of given up.
Okay.
They had that fire, but they had lost it. Champions are people that still had it. So you can imagine we had a lot of captives, not as many champions. But we worked at it consciously over 5 years, and we changed the number from captives to champions by double digits in every department in state government. We actually won an award at the end of my time in office, a national award for employee engagement. And to me, that was one of the greatest accomplishments we did.
Yeah.
Because they're the people that are doing the real work with citizens every day that I would never know about.
Right.
But they were making a difference in their lives, and they were feeling rewarded now because they were doing that, and they felt they could do that. Isn't that cool?
It's super cool. And I think what I think of when I hear you describe that is there's the famous Charlie Munger quote: "Show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome." Something I've heard people say is, in the private sector, the incentive for taking a risk, there's asymmetric upside. You start a company and it crushes it. A lot of people make a lot of money. Good things happen. And oftentimes people say, if you take a risk in government and it doesn't go so well, bad things happen, and there's not a lot of upside. I'm just curious of your take on the incentives, actually. So you talked about in private sector, there's the P&L. In the public sector, it's harder to measure. There is no P&L. What are the incentives you think that, a lot of it does boil down to leadership, if I pick up what you're saying, but what are the incentives that can take hold?
Well, we took that Michigan dashboard.
Yeah.
And we drilled it down to every department within the department. So we came up with the incentives or the measures to say, how do you know you're succeeding and doing good work? And easy illustrations, if you have a social services program, there are some people that need ongoing support. They're disabled in some fashion where they just need resources to live. And that's going to be a permanent condition. That's understandable. And you want to deliver that right and find out how else you can help them.
Right.
But a lot of those social service programs are ones to say, these people have an issue where they need additional education, they need better transportation, they need something that shouldn't be a permanent thing.
Yeah.
And the goal there should be not to just say, here's another check in perpetuity, but to say, let's build the program to help you. We're going to teach you how to fish.
Right.
And we did a lot of that. And that's the really rewarding part, because now people could succeed on their own. We wouldn't have to support them anymore. They actually go get better pay. They become a taxpayer.
Right.
It's a huge win for everyone. And one of the areas I was proud of, we actually did, was the Department of Corrections with people coming out of prison.
Yeah.
We created the vocational villages. It was a huge success, where basically we said, instead of just having people come out of prison where they get bus fare, they're just left, they walk out the gates like on those TV shows.
Yeah, right.
We created full-blown training programs, and we created separate housing where if you're in vocational villages, you went to work like 8 hours a day, just like you're on a job. So you learned all those soft skills.
Yeah.
We trained you. You could become a master mechanic. We added robotics software to these programs, and they were getting jobs. We were able to get recruiters to come in and hire them right out of the institution.
Yeah.
Into good paying jobs. And isn't that a great role for government?
It's
because
amazing.
They paid their price for being in the institution, but we want them to be as successful as possible coming out, because that's a win for all of us.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, similarly at the federal level, there's a program called, I think it's called Service to Software, that we're a part of. And you can hire someone who's leaving the military for an internship for a period of time. And it's part paid by the government, part paid by the company, but then they come out, and if they perform well, you can bring them on full time. And if the employee wants to do that, right? If they want to come work at your company, they can do that. Otherwise, they can go somewhere else. But they're getting real life, actual skills and experience that can carry them forward after the military. So I think it's a great model.
Well, these are cool programs.
Yeah.
So another cool program we did was, again, I'll use social services there. So we had people that would have to go meet with someone about needing help with their family situation. Their kids needed something. So they'd have to they'd take a bus or two, go to a government office, and have to wait in line, go in this government office, have a state employee help them with some issue.
Mm-hmm.
We actually said, would you like to move to the state employees? Would you like to move from this government office, and can we put you in the local school?
Yeah.
And it's like, instead of being there and making all this burden, why don't we put you in the community?
Right.
So in the school, then they can see the kids that they're supposed to be helping. They can see the parents. They can see and it was a home run shot. The state employees loved it. The quality of service went up. Everything worked well because we just changed the question around to say, instead of doing the traditional model, the bureaucratic model, let's get them engaged in the front lines.
Yeah. I really want to dig into the metric thing. I mean, in any company, there are metrics, right, that you're looking at. And a lot of them are customer related, like you're saying. And I remember vividly, like I was in consulting at Accenture, which is like very metric driven. And I remember you proposing that idea of having a dashboard. And you talked about the different metrics. It was across all the different areas of the state, and it just seemed cool. And in my view, that was leadership. What's why don't we have more of that? That's something that like we should be able to have more of, right?
Yeah, it's like, well, one, people have to have that focus, and they got to be willing to be measured and be held accountable. But I'll give you a great illustration. This is nerdy now a little bit. There's something called the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, which are the CAFR.
Yeah.
I'm kind of scary.
By the way, they changed it. It's an ACFR now, as of a year and a half ago.
Yeah. Well, it's this huge document, and in addition to all the financial stuff, they had all these metrics and measures in the back. And this gets back to what's an input, what's an output, and what's an outcome.
Yeah.
Outcomes are what really matter.
Yeah.
Sometimes they take some time, so you want to look at some outputs. But one output. A classic one was for the Michigan State Police, and they're a wonderful group. They did incredible work and did extra things when I was there that I'm really proud of. But when I became governor, the metric for the state police and the CAFR was how many miles they drove. Who cares?
Right.
So, but someone thought it was important to say, this is the measure of success of the Michigan State Police, is how many miles they drive. The question is, in that case, is how safe are the motorists, and how many motorists did you help out, or how did that all work out?
Yeah.
Miles were irrelevant, but it just shows people can find something to sort of avoid the question that this is where you have to challenge things. You have to ask common sense questions.
But is that anything more than leadership?
No, and it would be just as true in the private sector. I saw people do that in the private sector just as often as the public sector.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you have vanity metrics that you report. There's the thing like if you don't have profit, then you report revenue. If you don't have revenue, then you report users. If you don't have users, you boom, 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 boom. All the way at the bottom, you report that you're a good place to work.
Yeah, it's really about leadership, but it's about in making a difference and getting satisfaction from what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because the difference is, that's why I love the term captives versus champions.
Yeah.
Because the people that had gotten it then, that had found that motivation again, they weren't just doing their job, they were a champion.
Yeah.
I mean, they found great satisfaction in doing that, and they're just going to do better and better. And they're going to help other people do that because it's contagious.
Yeah. But that is just leadership, though, right?
Yeah.
Like it boils down to that. So how do you have a thesis on how you could have, maybe this sounds crazy to say today, but like less tribal, folks focused on improving the outcomes, how do we get to a place where that is more of a discourse? Or is that a fool's errand to hope for?
No, we did it, I believe.
Yeah, right, but it was for 8 years.
Yeah, but again, there's no reason it couldn't keep going.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it is, for example, when
But do you think it is atypical?
I think it's atypical to some degree. Yes, it should be more typical.
Right.
But illustrations is when we were finding people to come into our administration, we never asked what political party they belonged to or what their political views were. We looked at their track record, and it was based on merit.
Yeah.
Had they earned it?
Yeah.
And were they excited about the field? And what were their ideas? So that makes a huge difference in terms of doing that. And then you recognize that and continue the path. The other one is empowerment, is empowering to make decisions. I always told people my role is to have a great vision and to be a great coach and to be there if things got really messed up to help.
Yeah.
But otherwise, let them build their things and be a great resource to help them be successful. So I tried to be a mentor to the people working for me as much as anything.
Were there specific things that you and your administration did culturally to try to drive? I mean, obviously you talked about the dashboard, that's one aspect, but culturally to try to empower people and to encourage them to have ideas and support them to do it, you know, in this moving into champions thing, like what were some of the specifics that you guys did there?
Yeah, well, in the departments, we'd actually set aside discretionary resources and for them to try pilots.
Okay.
I believe in a lot of pilots. I also believe in training in terms of having people come in to give them tools to do that kind of stuff. And as I said, we reinforced it. If they had a failure, that just was a learning experience that then they could come back and work on, you know, really executing and making it happen in a better fashion the next time. And the other one is to not make it about politics. So one thing I'm proud of on the legislative side, so we had Republican majorities in both the House and the Senate when I was in all 8 years. So arguably Republicans could have done whatever they wanted to.
Yeah.
But we didn't treat people that way. We engaged people. We did a few things that Democrats didn't like.
Yeah.
But I had our team keep track of the percent of bills that we passed. They had a majority of Republicans and a majority of Democrats in the House, a majority of Republicans and a majority of Democrats in the Senate. So I had bipartisan support across the board.
Yeah.
The percentage of bills was about 90%.
Is that right?
Of all the bills I signed. So what that said is we didn't run over people. We listened to people and we actually made things better.
Yeah.
We did better legislation.
Right.
Just because you're a Democrat or a Republican doesn't mean you have a bad idea. We all have good ideas.
Yeah.
Let's figure out how to put them all together and blend them and not let those labels stop us from being Michiganders together.
Right. Go back to the pilot thing for just one moment. What are some tactics that you think leaders at all levels of government, state, local, education, what are some tactics that people could use to foster that pilot idea?
So I threw out the traditional planning model a couple decades ago, where the traditional planning model is if you're a big organization, you go get a consulting firm and you go write a 2 or 3 year report. You were in that world.
Yeah, I've been there, yeah.
So, and that still happens way too often.
Yeah.
So I changed my model to vision, engage, adjust, accelerate.
Okay.
Which is basically, if you have a vision that's based on common sense to say, I think this is going to work. If everything I know just looking at it makes sense, just go engage. Instead of doing a giant study, go out and try doing it. Do this pilot and do it in the real world because you're really going to find out what's going on.
Right.
Because if you do the planning model, the world's going to change on you before you even get a chance to do it.
For sure, yeah.
So do the engagement and then stop and adjust. After 3 to 6 months, take a break and look back to say what worked well compared to your vision.
Yeah.
And make adjustments. And now you can see this should work now, and then you can hit the gas.
Yeah. So that is a specific like mental model for how to set up one of these things. It seems like one of the challenges is budgets are tight everywhere. And so how do you decide that you want to allocate the capital into, how much money do you put into the trial bucket, and how do you decide of all the things or all the trials that people want to do, which ones get funded?
Yeah. So it starts by not beginning with money as your metric.
Yeah.
That's a huge issue in government. And I learned this. It used to drive me crazy that people would come up to me and say, I need this many millions of dollars.
Right.
And most of the traditional political discussion in our government is, I need money.
Right.
I never
if
said
I had
it
more
to
money,
him.
I could do this.
Yeah. I never said it to him, but it always went through my head. What do I look like, an ATM machine here? Because the real issue is, don't tell me you need money. Tell me what you want to do.
Yeah.
And tell me what outcome.
Yeah.
So I view it as you change the dialogue and you go immediately to the outcome. Going to your question about the pilots, let's talk about the various outcomes.
Yeah.
And to be blunt, a bunch of them are all going to be good ideas.
Right.
Most of these are, no one's going to come and do something
We would
evil.
love to drive down graduation rates.
Yeah.
No one's got that idea.
Yeah. So they're going to be good ideas, but then you have to rank them.
Yeah.
And they're not all created equal. So this is the thing about budget cuts. I don't believe in across the board cuts because that's a cop-out.
Yeah.
Same thing on picking your programs. It's like, let's evaluate them. Let's put them in some order and let's do them in that order. And then reevaluate and say, next cycle, well, we did these. Now let's look at this next one and reevaluate them and see, can we do that?
Yeah.
So I actually had a couple programs. One I was really proud of was Healthy Kids Dental. And it was a program where we did have some extra budget money after my first year where we didn't have any money.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do the whole state, but I said, I can add some counties. And so over the next 4 or 5 years, I would add so many more counties every year till we eventually covered the entire state. So again, don't think about your time frame for these, not just the pilot, but where it's going to take and what it's going to take to get real outcomes.
Yeah.
And say, is this, a short-term thing, a medium-term thing, a long-term thing? And if it takes longer and you don't have all the pieces, can you get on a path to get there?
Yeah. Just to drill into the tactics there, because I think it's a great idea, an interesting concept. The thing that, so if I step through that, and let's just say that I am a city manager, and would you recommend that I do that with my reports, all the people that run the different departments? We sit in a room, or maybe before we enter the room, everyone comes up with what they think their ideas are. Then we sit in a room, rank them together, and then you roll it out. Is that how you would do it mechanically? And then also, like, for the person that runs public works, would you recommend they do it with their team too? And at what level do you do it? How do you kind of cascade the priorities of the, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I would always start with the people themselves running those areas, asking them to bring them to me.
Right.
And why is that? This is a classic I learned back in my Gateway days, because people would come say, tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And my answer to them is I'm not going to do that for 2 reasons.
Yeah.
One is you're closer to the situation than I am. And secondly, you have more subject matter knowledge than I do. So they need to do that, have them propose their different ideas. It is a great idea if you can have the other people listen to these ideas, because they'll recognize, hey, that is something that is more important.
Yeah.
I mean, they may not like it. They wish their whole list was the most important, but they recognize there has to be a blend.
Yeah.
So having them hear it, but then what I would normally do then is come back and say, okay, here's the way I'm looking at it. Let's discuss that and give me some feedback of what I'm missing here.
And would you recommend, how does that fit into like a budgeting cycle, or is there any kind of like planning cycle?
Yeah, you do that as part of your budget process. And it's a series of, iterative meetings where you go through that process. The funny joke we had in ours is we would get our senior team together, and we had a CPA that John Nixon was our first budget director, and I'm a CPA, and we're 2 nerds. I won't call John a nerd. I shouldn't do that. But we would start talking so fast. My chief of staff would joke, oh, they've gone off into dolphin speak now. Because it was budget talk.
Right, yeah.
But you'd bring it down and have this discussion at a slower speed and walk through these issues about what to do. But I would try to set priorities for them. One classic case that I had is I had some discretionary money at one point. And the question is, should I do it for preschool or for higher education? And I went with preschool, about doing more free preschool spots. And I remember I got yelled at by the higher ed people, that they were very unhappy that they didn't get the resources they wanted. So I said, I understand you're doing your job well, you're advocating for the area you're in, but let me tell you the decision I had to make. And I said, I had to decide between 3-year-olds and you guys. What has the higher utility to society in the long run?
Yeah.
And they knew the answer, but they said, we still want the money.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate.
Sure. Yeah. So you fit it into you have the vision, engage, accelerate framework. That makes sense. You fit it into the budgeting cycle. What do you think about for folks who might be hesitant to do that? Because, if we try this thing and it fails, how do you try to, like, that seems like a cultural element, but what are some tactics that you would use to try to maybe address that concern that people have?
Yeah, well, the first one is, if you don't do that, are you okay with average? Or okay?
Well, average, I mean, no, but
no,
average doesn't get people fired, right?
No,
like,
but I'm just saying
Yeah.
it doesn't. It's
Yeah.
you don't create a champion by saying we'll be okay.
Be average. Yeah, be okay. Right.
Yeah. So, and the other one is to actually let them see some things that didn't work, and that I'd have their back.
Right. I think that seems super important.
That's a big message to say they knew they had support. And that's where the relentless thing is, because then we could show, okay, what didn't work? When are we going to go get it again? That's the relentless part.
Right.
The other thing I often tell people is quite often when you find that model of what you're talking about, people will just avoid making a decision.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people over and over again, particularly in today's world with the velocity of change,
Right.
not making a decision is making a decision.
Absolutely.
And it just means the decision's going to be made for you rather than you making an affirmative decision.
Yeah.
So wouldn't you like to be in charge of your life more, in charge of this issue more, and make the decision rather than having someone else do it for you?
I would love to know, I agree with that completely. I'd love to know your take. So for instance, that you probably are familiar with this. There's like the type 1 decision, type 2 decision that Amazon talks about, or door 1, door 2. And door 1 is like an irreversible decision. Like you go down this path, you can't change it, right? It's like, for instance, in business, it would be like who you put on your cap table. A second type 2 decision is like if you try it and it doesn't work, you can reverse it easily, right? And so the Amazonian way to think about it is like if it's a type 2 decision, try stuff, be 51% sure, try it, because you're going to learn more by trying it, to your point. Do you think that framework applies in government? Because my perception is that citizens are less comfortable, and you know way more than I, like it seems like citizens would be less comfortable with government taking risks with their money than in the private sector because it's public money. Is that real, or is that a boogeyman?
I think you have to be more attuned to it. So one difference between government and business is the amount of attention you get to your decision making.
Exactly, yeah.
So,
ends up in the newspaper.
Yeah,
right.
You get a lot more of that. But again, I learned from that, and I grew with that, where you just learn it comes with the territory.
That's life.
Yeah, you do need to make decisions.
Yeah.
And you do need to be responsible for those.
So do you think that in government, like if it's a reversible decision, do you think it's like, be 51% sure, pick one, because you'll learn more by doing? Do you think that's true in government?
Yeah,
too?
so what I would say, particularly when you do pilots,
Yeah.
it may not be reversible easy, but still the price isn't that high that you can find ways to address it and correct it. So I'm still very much in terms of let's pilot, let's try things, let's keep on innovating, let's create this continuous cycle of trying these new ideas, because you need to do that.
Is there an example that comes to mind? I'm curious, like, is there an example that comes to mind of a pilot that you feel like was a reversible decision, but also like maybe to someone on the outside, they might think, oh, that's a tough one to walk back? Is there something like that comes to mind? Because in government, it seems like these are all consequential decisions that they're, like, I'm just curious if there's something like that.
Yeah, I'd have to give that one some thought, because there were so many decisions.
Yeah.
And again, it's hard to say is it reversible or not, or there's a price. There's a price for everything.
Right. So it's continuum of reversibility.
Yeah, so it's not,
Right. Yeah. So I just want to spend one more minute on the economic development point. If you had a magic wand, knowing what you know now about the experiences that you've had in government and at the MEDC and with Spark and in your business career, if you had a magic wand, what are the things that, and maybe even go micro, like for a city like Ann Arbor, for a city like Detroit, what are some of the foundational elements, to your point about gardening, that really are critical for local leaders, whether they're elected or part of an administration, to get right?
Yeah, so it's getting back to fundamentals and not thinking about the money as your primary mechanism or the first thing you talk about. So one thing I was really proud of, that I don't know if it's still continuing, but we had a home run shot program that I just made up, and it was called Pure Michigan Business Connect. So this was a major program of the MEDC. When I say major, it required a couple people at the MEDC, and it just said, we're going to work to get Michigan companies to buy more from other Michigan companies.
Okay.
So it was a friends and family kind of program.
Yeah.
So we brought companies together. We actually got our utilities both signed up to say they would buy so much more. They would buy well over $100 million worth of stuff over the next few years from Michigan companies. So they've increased their Michigan sourcing.
Yeah.
They actually ended up doing 5 or 10x of that number. And they found better suppliers.
Interesting.
And so we found that we literally generated a few $1 billion extra revenue for Michigan companies by simply saying, can we be a matchmaker? Can we connect you? How much, that didn't cost us any incentive money, anything else. So a lot of it is get outside that mindset of just saying it's about having more money.
Yeah.
Think about what difference you can really make. So when you look at economic development, like at the state level, what I really recommend is go back, let's have a clear vision of what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Focus in on gardening before hunting, but you can do both, but say this is the priorities. Dedicate some resources to them so they know what they can work within, but create strict lanes for them to operate in. Have a strong board of oversight to make sure they're doing that, and let them consistently do that for 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
That will be more successful than any flavor of the day program or going after this or that or anything like that. The funny part is it's back to Warren Buffett and the power of compounding. If you think about it, if you do something consistently over time and you do it well, it will pay off.
Absolutely. I remember someone asked Buffett, like, if you want to have, how do you build a brand like Coca-Cola? And his answer was, you start in the 1800s and you invest in it every year since. Yeah. I mean, it's exactly what you're saying. Okay, so I just want to, like, one thing that I've observed is in our work, there are a lot of well-intended rules that are created because they're created in response to an issue that happened. And so that might be, rules around RFPs or council approvals for spending, insurance, out clauses in contracts. And a lot of times, like I said, I think those rules are well intended, but they add complexity for people, companies trying to navigate them that actually, as time marches on, they have the exact opposite effect of the intent, where they undermine competition or they undermine supply. And now, government buyers are left with fewer options and they're more expensive. So, with respect to the, trying to get the energy or the utility companies to buy local, is that, how do you think about that unintended consequence thing? Is it something like, was that a rule that was written down, or was it just like hey, try to do this, like make a good...
we ask them.
Yeah.
And
it wasn't a law.
No, you're making a really important point. So the complexity, our world has grown in complexity.
Yeah.
And we've actually come to the point now of adding too many rules and regulations. So it starts collapsing under its own weight.
Right.
It doesn't work. And we should get rid of a lot of this stuff, in my view.
Yeah.
And why do I say that? If you stop for a second, ask yourself the default setting you should have when you think about a regulatory environment. Should we assume the average person is a good, honest person, or should we assume they're a bad person? If you do the complex model, it's largely based on the model that they assume people are going to do bad things and we have to stop them.
Yeah.
My model is I assume the average person is a good average person and we have to deal with the outliers, the really bad people, which we should go nail.
Yeah.
So why create more rules to constrict
the people trying to do good?
Just trying to do good.
Yeah,
so my view is get rid of most of this stuff. And the analogy I'll give you, I go back in history. So this is another nerdy comment I would give you. We were a common law country based on the English system of we didn't have rules for a lot of things. And if you had a dispute, you went to court and got it decided.
Yeah.
The French do the Napoleonic Code where they wrote a rule for everything.
Yeah.
So what we've done is we've sort of decided, we've not decided, but unconsciously we moved from a common law country to the Napoleonic Code. And as we grow in more complexity, just having more rules is only worse.
Yeah, right.
And the classic illustration of a specific program I did was one of the first bills I signed was the Michigan Agricultural Environmental Assurance Program. How's that for a mouthful? And it was a program to recognize farmers for best practices in agricultural things that were environmentally sound. Think about this. If I would have gone to Michigan's farmers to say, we're going to pass a law and put rules on you that you have to follow all this stuff, I would have been hung on an effigy out
Yeah.
on the Capitol lawn.
Yeah.
We made it voluntary rules. We had thousands of farms go out and get audited and want this recognition. So I'm so proud when I drive around Michigan. If you drive out in the countryside, look for those white signs. You'll spot them right away.
Is that right?
And those white signs are MEEP signs that say they're certified to be good environmental agricultural practices in a number of different areas. It's just because we asked them and we said, we'll give you positive recognition.
Yeah.
We need to move our models a lot more in that direction and get rid of a lot of this.
Well, there must be, do you think there's an incentive that exists that has us going more toward rulemaking versus, good practices and things? And is that a reversible thing? The evidence on the table would seem to suggest it's a one-way street. We're adding more rules over time.
So part of it is this assumption, but the other problem is
Assumption of bad.
Bad.
Yeah,
But the other problem you got to look out for is quite often somebody is doing it because they're a special interest trying to protect their own turf.
Yeah, of course.
And keep people out or restrict it to themselves.
Right.
So they have a benefit.
Yep.
And special interests, we have too many special interests driving too much in our country.
Mm.
So I think we need like housekeeping. We need a national housekeeping on regulations and a lot of this stuff and get back to the essence of what are rules here that really are needed to stop bad people from doing bad things.
Yeah.
And why should we tell people in their lives what else to do?
Yeah.
I mean, just think about, there's been a lot of studies now like on housing costs. If you look at all the construction codes, zoning codes,
Absolutely.
they're saying that the average addition to a house can be $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 of regulatory burden on a house.
Yeah.
Just think if you drop the average housing price by $80,000, $90,000, how many people could afford a house?
Right.
That's huge.
Yeah. Right.
And how much faster would we have homes going up?
Right. Yeah. I mean, well said. Do you? I guess let's segue into the future. You talked about the housekeeping. I'm curious. Is there a Rick Snyder prescription for if you had a magic wand? What would you do to do the housekeeping you just described? What tactically would you do?
Well, however
impractical it may be.
We talked about a lot of tactics, but the first thing I would do is a different topic is civility. Our greatest threat in this country to the United States is us, because we don't treat people with respect in the way we should to one another. And that's the biggest issue we face, is we got to get back to the golden rule. Shouldn't we treat people like we would like to be treated? And get back to that. Because if you can do that, just think about the ability then to address all these other issues.
Yeah.
Because right now, people are attacking one another, shooting at one another without knowing what they're really talking about or doing in many, many cases.
I agree with you.
And it's destructive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, couldn't agree more.
So that's why it's cool. I just recently did a panel with the other 3 former governors in Michigan talking about civility. And it was a wonderful dialogue, but the question I have is, what do we do next to keep that dialogue going?
Yeah. What's the answer?
Well, I'm talking to people about that.
Yeah.
Because it's not a static one-point thing. It needs to be a dynamic process, because we need to speak up. Because the lack of civility has gotten terrible, and things like social media just continue to feed it.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. What's your take on, I mean, I know you spend a lot of time these days in the startup world with Sensei and this. What's your take on how technology today, whether that's in cyber or in AI, how are these things going to evolve, and what should state governments be thinking about? What should local governments be thinking about?
Yeah, so Sensei is a lot of fun. It's rewarding. I wanted to do something when I got done where I could still give to the public good.
Yeah.
But do it in a private company. And that's what we do, is we help small and medium-sized organizations be safer. And it really works. Our solution's great. So to your question about both cybersecurity and AI, first of all, I think government needs to get a better understanding of what the issues are. To be open with you, I know on cybersecurity, most governmental units don't have the expertise, and they should be bringing in firms like mine. There are other firms, a bunch of firms in Ann Arbor. You got a neighbor here that's in cybersecurity.
Yep.
So we can all do better. Same thing on AI is, let's convene people that know what they're talking about and can talk thoughtfully about it in the broader social context to say, how do we educate people? How do we be safer? Because right now, people are sort of just in pockets doing this stuff, and we don't have a comprehensive program. When I was governor of Michigan, we were the leading state in the nation in cybersecurity by far, because I happened to find some other good nerds in state government, and we made it a priority.
Yeah.
But it was really disturbing. I went to an event with a bunch of other states recently of their cyber people. And I hate to say it, we are still about 10 years ahead of probably the majority of states.
And what are the things that I don't know how much you feel like you can share on that topic. I'd be curious to know, though, what are the things that, in your view, they should be doing that they're not?
Yeah, well, one of us just doing it within the state government itself,
Yeah.
training, fishing. A lot of them are doing those exercises.
Okay.
But we actually started councils. We had a convening of our public utilities, of our financial services, and of our healthcare.
Okay.
We'd bring the private sector in and say, we're creating a safe environment where you can share and we can talk about what threats you're seeing, what's going on.
That's cool.
And we actually passed a law. So if something went on that they were concerned about publicly disclosing, there are rules where they had to at some point, but they were things on the border where they wanted to share and help others. We made it so they could come share with us that we could share with the other companies or the
Okay.
other organizations.
Got it.
So we could be that clearinghouse
I see.
of a safe place to do improvement.
So just to play that back and make sure I'm tracking, you're saying healthcare, financial services, utilities, all places that have like very critical roles in the world.
We could have done it in others, but those were the highest priorities.
Yeah.
If you think about it from a governmental point of view or a
Right.
societal point of view.
And are you saying that the leaders from those different sectors of the economy would meet with leaders in government?
Yeah.
Okay.
And meet with themselves,
Yeah.
other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
And create that place to talk. The other one is we created the Civilian Cyber Corps, which is a wild idea, but it's the idea if we had a national disaster on cyber or we had a big disaster in one area,
Right.
would we have all the cyber experts we needed to go solve their problem?
Hmm.
No organization has enough staff to do that.
Right.
So we said, can we go out and recruit people that are willing to be volunteers, that if there is a massive cyber incident, we could call them up like the National Guard.
Really?
And actually, I went to the National Guard and said, can we create a separate part of the National Guard for cybersecurity? The Nerd Corps. To do that. They thought that was entertaining.
Yeah.
So I said, we'll do it in Michigan without them.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
we created the Civilian Cyber Corps, and we trained people up. They volunteered. We did limited liability protections, and so we have a small group, but a group here that can come if we needed them to help on specific issues in cyber.
Yeah.
That's catching on now in other states. And
That's
there's
cool.
actually national legislation now to look at that. But think of the same thing in the AI context. AI is even going faster
Right.
than the cyber thing.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about that. In your experience, what are some ways that you think AI can really make a difference in government? Well, it could be state government, it could be local. Any specific things that come to mind there?
Well, again, services to our citizens.
Yeah.
And so I had a vision. We never got fully there, but I wanted to create my page, MI,
Yeah.
get the
Yep.
routine to say, why don't we flip the script on our entire data system? So right now, you as a citizen dealing with the state of Michigan, you go to the Secretary of State, then you go to a different department, you go to Treasury. Everybody's got you in a separate system, right? And you're sliced and diced how many ways?
Right. And
So-
it doesn't connect.
Right.
Right.
So with AI and the tools coming someday, we should have my page, which is basically, it's flipped now to say everything is,
Citizen portal, everything I
Citizen-centric.
need is there.
and it's, you give your address once, you don't need to update your address anyplace else, you
Yeah.
can find out information. That's all doable.
Yeah, totally. That's a great idea. Someone should start that company. Very good. Well, Rick, I really appreciate you making time to come by. It was awesome to chat and hear just the history of economic development, relentless positive action, being outcome-oriented, testing, improving, being civil, listening to people, not, looking at someone's, whether they come from a red background or a blue background, but what's their idea. Those are all great ideals, and thanks for sharing them with me today.
No, it's great to be with you, Mike. Thank you.
Appreciate you making the time.